Still to come this hour, how the Coalition's latest savings measures could affect smaller firms. We'll speak to Peter Strong from the Council of Small Business. And coming up on NX Votes, the 20 seats where voters are most at odds over key election policies. Now, we did attempt to get an interview with a Labor person for tonight's show. We approached the Treasurer and the Finance Minister and Labor's campaign headquarters, but our requests weren't able to be met. We are joined, though, as part of our panel, which we lined up some weeks ago, by Labor MP Gabe Brodman and from the Liberal Party MP Andrew Southcott. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Lyndal.
Thank you, Lyndal.
We might start off on the subject of costings. The Coalition's previously faced criticism over its pre-election figures, but the Shadow Treasurer is confident they'll stand up to scrutiny.
Our assumptions and our numbers are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And we have three eminent Australians verifying that. Now, again, no one has done what we have done here.
Andrew, after the last election, Treasury figures found an $11 billion hole in your costings. After this election, the Parliamentary Budget Office will put out its own reconciliation of costings, and also the Blue Book and the Red Book last election were able to be got under FOI, so we might be able to see some of the Treasury figures as well. Are you absolutely confident your figures will stand up this time?
Well, these figures have gone through the Parliamentary Budget Office, but also the independent panel as well. And what we saw today, for example, with the paid parental leave, a policy which has been described by the Labor Party as unaffordable, it actually overall improves the budget bottom line. It improves the budget position by $1.1 billion over the forward estimates. So we've now released most of our policies during the election period, and this represents the bulk of our savings and the bulk of our costings, although there is still some more to come. But we will have them out before the Labor Party has on the last two elections, which is right on the last day of the election campaign on Friday. We'll have them out before that.
Gay, the Labor Party, the Prime Minister, the Treasurer have been calling for the Coalition to release its figures. Now, we didn't get all of them today, but we got a fair bit of their savings, didn't we?
Yeah, but give us the full package. I'm particularly keen to see the full package, particularly in regards to the hit to the public service. I mean, a lot of what was announced today is not news. We've heard it all before, particularly on the school kids bonus and the public service. I want to know the true story. I want to see the full package so I can get an assessment on what is actually happening with the public service.
But we haven't seen all Labor's costings, though. The really long-term promises from both sides of politics don't have dollar figures attached or a pathway on how you intend to get there? Well,
we announced through our economic statement before the election was called where we're going over the next 4 years, and that gives us a pretty clear picture, and we're committed to the Charter of Budget Honesty and coming through on that. But what I want to know is the full picture from the Coalition. I want to know what their plans are for Australia, and most importantly, I want to know what their plans are for Canberra.
Andrew, you mentioned you'd had the Parliamentary Budget Office do your policies. Why won't you release those figures from the Parliamentary Budget Office? The Greens are releasing them. There are some from the Labor Party as well. Why can't we see the Coalition's figures?
We've said we'll release them when the government releases the Treasury workings that come behind their policies.
Why put that caveat on it, though? Why not just release them?
So that's what we've said, but we're very confident that this stacks up. As I said, we've got two processes here. No opposition has gone through this before, a Parliamentary Budget Office, but also through an independent panel of eminent Australians who have certified these costings as being accurate.
Now, the Shadow Treasurer today at the Press Club was asked when a coalition government would deliver a surplus. He said when it is reasonable and responsible to do so. That means there's no time frame on it from your side, is there?
That's right. We've adopted no time frame, but one of the things we have to say is the Labor Party have committed to budget surpluses in any number of budgets, and they have not delivered a surplus budget since 1989. What we will show and what everyone will be able to see by next week is that we will have a better budget position than the Labor Party, and it will be showing a pathway where we see improvements in the budget. But to put a time frame puts us in the same position as the Labor Party, which have again, time and time again, said that they would deliver a surplus by such and such a year, and that has just never happened.
Gay, that's true, isn't it? The Labor Party, the then Treasurer Wayne Swan, delivered commitments to bring down a budget surplus at a certain date and missed them. You're now forecasting a budget surplus in 2016-17. That's not guaranteed, is it?
Well, we've outlined our pathway to that in the economic statement, and we also acknowledge too that we are an economy in transition. The environment is changing and we had to make appropriate responses to that, and we've outlined that response through the economic statement.
But there's no way of knowing, is there, whether revenue will be written down again, and you might have to look again at that pathway back to surplus.
Well, we've got the plan to 2016-17, and that's clear. We've been open and transparent in our approach. What I want is for the Coalition to be open and transparent in terms of what their plans are for savings and costings, particularly when it comes to the public service.
We might move on now. Personality politics were at play again today. The Prime Minister suggested Tony Abbott didn't have the temperament to deal with international issues like the one unfolding in Syria.
Over 20 years in Parliament, 19 years as an exceptionally aggressive and negative politician by any standard in Australian political history, and suddenly in the 20th year, as we get near to an election, we try and tone all that down a bit and play the statesman. I just think Australians see through that.
If you want to know my character, ask my colleagues. If you want to know Mr Rudd's character, ask his colleagues.
Gay, Kevin Rudd is the only Prime Minister who's come to office out of the recent Prime Ministers with any foreign policy experience. Don't most Prime Ministers come to office and learn foreign policy on the job?
Well, and Kevin Rudd, having had that tremendous foreign policy background, has been a huge advantage. I remember people talking about when he was in China early in his term, and he spoke to that group of university students in Mandarin. It was a particularly special moment, and I think that his foreign policy credentials place him very well on the international stage as Prime Minister. It is a significant advantage.
Andrew, do you think that Tony Abbott has the temperament and judgment to take on foreign policy issues? It's not something that has been part of his argument. As I said, it's something that most Prime Ministers come to the job without experience in.
Absolutely he does. He was a minister for 9 years. He was a cabinet minister for 7 years, so he sat through all of those debates in the Howard cabinet. Kevin Rudd's attack on Tony Abbott reminds me of what Paul Keating said on the eve of the 1996 election, that Asian leaders wouldn't deal with John Howard. It was completely untrue then, and what Kevin Rudd has said about Tony Abbott is untrue now. Tony Abbott will be able to lead a stable government. He has shown that he can work very well with a stable team, and on foreign policy it is something that most Prime Ministers do learn in the job, but he has more ministerial experience. Tony has more ministerial experience than almost anyone on the Labor side, including the Prime Minister.
Gay, why raise Tony Abbott's temperament in this way? Is Mr Rudd seeking to put doubt in people's minds?
Look, I think that what we should be focusing on is not the personalities, is the policies. When I'm out door knocking, when I'm out speaking to people at mobile offices, when I'm doing pre-polling at the moment, when I'm out doing street stalls, people want us to talk about the policies.
But Kevin Rudd raised this issue.
Yes, I know, but the thing is that what they want us to do is focus on that. It'd be really good if we could focus on that in today's discussion in terms of the policies. People want to have a clear vision about what we have, what our vision is for the future. Just the other day during a door knocking session, I spoke to a woman who said, I want to know your vision for my grandchildren. That's what Australians want us to focus on. That's what Canberrans want us to focus on. Let's focus on the policies.
But why then is Kevin Rudd raising this issue of temperament and judgment?
Let's focus on the policies. I mean, Kevin Rudd chose to do that today, but let's focus on the policies.
We might just move on to one quick final issue. Andrew, Gay mentioned the pre-poll voting. I've just heard from the Electoral Commission that pre-poll voting is up already substantially from the 2010 election. Are you finding that that is the case?
Yes, I am, both with postal votes and pre-poll. We're finding that they're running ahead of previous years. It always used to be said that, you know, one of the signs on election day when people wanted to change the government was that people would be lined up outside the polling booth at 7:30 in the morning. Hopefully for us, this is a sign that people do want to change the government, that they're actually not just can't even wait till the September the 7th, that they want to start voting in the 3 weeks leading up to the election.
And Gay, are you finding the same thing in your seat?
In terms of pre-polling, I mean, it varies on the booth actually. In one of the booths it's been relatively quiet. Today was a relatively busy stage. What I have found interesting is the fact that a lot of people aren't taking out vote cards, which is interesting. So I'm going to be interested to see whether we'll see an increase in the informal vote.
Andrew, it does raise the question that some of your policies aren't out yet. We haven't seen a policy on aged care. We haven't seen your policy on mental health. And as I mentioned earlier, the final costings aren't available yet. Should these things be out earlier in campaigns if people are voting earlier and earlier, as has been the case for the last 2 or 3 elections?
Well, I think what I said before, Labor didn't get their final costings out until the day before the 2007 election, 2010 election. Also, as to when people vote, that is a matter for them, and as to who they vote for, that's also a matter for them. So really, I mean, the other thing that I am finding is that the numbers of people who are undecided is narrowing week by week, and there are now very few people who are genuinely undecided. I think a lot of people have now made up their mind about whether they want real change or whether they want to stick with the current government, and I think that's what we're seeing with the pre-poll and postal vote figures that we've seen so far. On that note, we'll have to leave it. Andrew Southcott and Gai Broadman, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Lyndal.
Thank you, Lyndal. Thank you, Gai.